Hey, Mr. Fitz here. Hope you're going well. This short video, I'm going to show you how to put together your box in what we call an assembly. This is an environment that allows us to bring our parts in, check to make sure they fit together, and if you're lucky and it works well, you can also do some little animations by clicking and moving your objects. So to start with, you may have a file already in your file set that has an assembly on there. I'm going to show you how to create a new one. We go start with new, this little icon here. Make sure you're in metric. We're going to come down here. We're not going to create a part. We're going to come down to assemblies. So you need the standard millimeters.iam. Press create. In this blank environment, we're going to start placing our parts. So our box, you can refer to the drawing. I'd like you to start with the base. This is the base here. Let's just click and place that in our assembly. You notice the view will change to a 3D view. We need just one of these. We're going to go ahead and start adding the other parts. So our box is going to need a back. Open this one, just place it randomly. It's going to also need a front. Place it randomly. It's going to need some sides. Now remember from the drawing, there's two of these, so click 2. We also need the lid. Top, or the lid we've called it. Just put this randomly inside here. And we also have a series of hinges, hinge L left and a hinge right. So place these in here, right click and press OK to hop out of that one. And you're going to see here that these are your parts. When you first put these in, you can click and move these however you would like. So it might help you to start with to move these where they are going to go. The front of the box is green, so I'm going to leave that one there. This is going to be the front. There's my base, back, two sides, and the top. There's also a command here called free rotate. So it might help you in the first instance to rotate these so they roughly look in place. So from our drawing, the hole for the hinges go at the back of the box. Right click and press OK. I'm going to free rotate. I'm going to click this one and go free rotate. Move that one. Right click and go OK. Now it doesn't matter if these are rough to start with. I always like to get these in position so the radius is the box at the front, sort of how it's going to go together. Now, what the first thing I want you guys to do is to right click the base. Now, what we want to do is make this fixed. So with your mouse, right click and go grounded. That stops this one from moving and allows us to now build our box onto it. So the clever tool we're going to use in here is we're going to create what's called a constraint, a whole series of constraints. In this tool is some pretty intuitive little things here. I'm going to use the make constraint. What we're going to do is we're going to start clicking faces and create some relationships between them. So for example, I'm going to start with this side and I'm going to click, let's say this bottom face. Please be careful here, don't click on edges, try to use faces wherever you can. Now with a bit of cleverness to rotate your model, I'm going to say that that bottom face is going to touch on this bottom face of my part. That's going to give you a bit of a preview. That looks good, and press apply. Now what that's going to do is that creates now a relationship between those two parts. If I just press cancel out of there, if I start moving this now, this is going to move according to that mate I've just applied. So you can also expand here and see that was the mate between the bottom face and that face. If it's the wrong one or an error, you can always right click and press delete. So press to turn it off or delete here to completely remove it. So what we need to do is start putting these relationships between our parts according to how it should fit. So another one we're going to apply is, let's say, this face here of the side. That should be touching this face here. So remember again, zoom in, click on the face. It's going to put those together. Every now and then, what is possible is that there are two options for these. You can click on the two options. So it's a little bit hard to maybe understand this, but these two faces can touch in two different ways. So that way there, and also if I press on the other one, it can flip it over and those faces are still touching. So if something comes weird, try pressing on this alternate solution. That looks how I want it. I'm going to go OK. The last one I'm going to do is say constrain. I'm going to choose this whole front face, and that whole front face will sit against here and go okay. Excellent. All right, that shows these together. You will notice that there's a little bit of an overlap with our parts. This is because when we laser cut these, I've already determined that the laser cutting lines removes a bit of material. So a little bit of interference, we call it, between these parts is okay. But what we're mainly looking for is ensuring that all the corners line up. Okay, so part by part, let's apply those. So I'm going to do one more and then you're going to do the rest. So constrain, let's put the back piece on. So I know that, let's start with this face. That face there should be touching on this face here. Apply. What else? That face there should be, whoop, I can't quite see it. I'm just going to move this out of the way to make sure I can get to it. So this face here touches on this face here. Apply. And I can just move this out of the way. You can see that there's one more constraint that I need to fix this. And that's going to be, move this out of the way a bit further. Constrain that face there. Should be touching on this face here. Okay. Cool. All right, so your box should start to be built like this. Now you'll notice that when I've got all my constraints, if I go to move an object, it will not move if it is constrained. If it has no constraints, it will move freely. That's a pretty important tip there. So we're going to keep adding and building these. I'll show you the finished result in a second, but you're going to apply constraints so all those bits come together. These hinges are a little bit tricky. So I'm going to show you the constraint I want you to use for that. So you need to sort of work out the orientation of these, and if you make an error, don't worry, just go back. But for this constraint, I'm going to put this cylindrical face, which is this one, into this hole here. So choosing the faces, not the edges or the center. Now, this is the instance that I actually want to turn this around. So I'm going to move this to that side. That flips it around, and that's what I want. So that hinge is going to go in there, apply. This cylindrical face is going to go into the other hole of this side in here. And same thing, I'm going to flip it over and go apply. And now you'll notice if I move this one, it can still move in and out, so it might need some more constraints, but using two cylindrical faces allows me to rotate these, which is pretty cool. I'm hopeful that you can keep adding more and more constraints. So eventually what will happen is when you put the lid inside these faces, you'll come across to my other assembly and you'll see here that the hinges will move. So fingers crossed your box looks like this at the end and the lid will move up and down. And like I said, the main purpose of this is you can go through and check to make sure that this all goes together. You can actually check the hinges as well. If I rotate this, you can just see that this isn't going to run into the back of this part. So we can check what we call assembly interferences to make sure that this won't have any problems. Cool. This is a really good and important check to do whenever you build any parts, to put them together in assembly and make sure that everything works. If something is off or wrong, the beauty with CAD is I can go into a part. So let's say my back had a problem. I can right click and go open. I can change my dimensions on this, and this will update in my assembly. So any errors you may have made in your modeling, you can fix and you can check before we go further. Okay, please have a go at doing the assembly. Show Mr. Fitz or your teacher what you have done in that regard, and then we can check and go through the next steps for laser cutting. All the best.